Now let's finish the last two steps of the controlling module. So we have one actual activities and then a final review of the assessment and allocation results. So step 13, allocate the cost of the maintenance department to the assembly department depending on the hours used by the assembly department. If you can recall, the total working hours of the maintenance is 1,800 hours for the year, and the assembly department used 600 out of it. So before any calculation, we can tell easily the allocation percentage should be like 1/3, right? So 1/3 of the total cost for the maintenance cost center will be allocated to the assembly department. And for this one, we need to go through the allocation by price calculation is not a assessment because all of the cost from the maintenance department will be emptied to like the 600 of them will be like 1/3 of them will be emptied to the assembly department. And so this one, if you follow the manual path, so we get on to the accounting controlling, then the cost center accounting, planning, and the allocations. So under the allocation, you can see we have different type of allocations. We have overhead allocation, distribution, and we use the assessment for the cafeteria cost. And then for this maintenance cost allocated to the assembly, we are going to use the price calculation, which is based upon the activity consumptions. And if you want to try, like we do have something, you can check each of them. So you can see SAP has this very detailed differences, okay, definitions for the different type of allocations. And then let's click on price calculations, so KSPI, and let's confirm our allocation. I'm sorry, the cost center again, because I just used my account to check another student's work completed. So I need to re-enter my controlling area and continue. And this one is simple than the assessment. So let's put the cost center group again. So group 018 for my. So rather than, so that's the nice thing about creating a cost center group. You already have the 3 departments involved and the SAP now, if you recall the assessment, they will try to allocate from each other. And if you call the price calculation, they will only allocate between the maintenance and also the assembly based upon the working hours. But all of the cost centers has been defined in the group. So we put the group name, and again, let's do the version is a default, and the period is 1 to 12. And fiscal year 2024, and you can test wrong, okay, before we can finalize the result. So let's execute. And you got a output, like because you can see the results only involve the maintenance and assembly department, and they calculated a cost per hour for each of the department. Again, because of the display, they are not seeing all of the numbers. For example, if you see the assembly, this is 6, you should have 6,000 total hours. And then the maintenance is 1,800 hours. And that's the price per hour. Okay, so price. So based upon the total cost of the cost center, so we have one, for assembly, remember we have 150,000 total, right? So per hour is 45. And then for the maintenance, we have 60,000. And then you have 1,800. So they give you the rate. And now let's go back. So not the saving, let's go back to formally run the allocation. And let's uncheck the test run. Okay, this time we are formally run the allocation and execute. Because I did something before, okay, like because if you rerun a cycle of the price calculations, if you just try to rerun, but it give you some warning about it. So I will just click OK. We are getting the same results. But now let's go back to check what the final output, like the cost information for each of the cost centers after we finish the assessment and allocation. So exit from here. Yeah, end. Okay, yes, and exit. And let's using the planning overview. Okay, that's telling how the cost information will look like for each of the cost centers. Let's look again for the CCCA, the cafeteria cost center. I don't think this will change for the cafeteria. That should be the same thing as we check in step 11. Okay, because we haven't, for 13, we only did the allocation between the maintenance and the assembly. It didn't affect the cafeteria. So we should have the same result for the cafeteria as before, but let's confirm. Yeah, execute. So if you see the cafe, we still have, remember the original cost is 150,000. We allocate out 90,000 to the assembly and 30,000 to the maintenance. Then for the cafeteria, it's keep its own cost for 30,000. So that's the under-absorbed cost balance for the cafeteria. And then let's now check the MA, the maintenance. So the maintenance initially has its own cost. Okay, let's explain and understand what's happening here. The maintenance cost center initially has its own labor cost 60,000. But it's getting 30,000 of the cafeteria cost from the assessment we did in step 11, right? So 60,000 plus 30,000. So the total cost for the maintenance cost center is 90,000. We have direct cost and indirect cost. Then for all of the 60,000 is allocated to the assembly department. Oh, I'm sorry. You allocate 30,000 to the assembly department because they used 600 hours out of the 1,800. So 1/3 goes to the assembly department and the maintenance keep the remaining. And I believe there are other departments also receiving service from the maintenance, but because of our exercise, we only can focus on these 3 cost centers. So we are assuming, so we keep the rest of the 60,000 for the maintenance department, but eventually it will go to other cost centers. Okay, so you have a zero balance for the remaining. Okay, like under over absorbed cost is 0. So that's the output, the final plan review for the maintenance cost center. Let's finally check the assembly department. Assembly department, its own cost initially is 150,000 labor expenses, right? So labor expenses is the direct cost. But we got the allocation from the cafeteria by $90,000 plus the maintenance cost 30,000. So 120,000 indirect cost will be added to the 150,000. So the total cost for the assembly cost center is 270,000. And this one is not going anywhere until the end of our exercise because this is a production department. Imagine is assembling our final finished good. So this cost will be transferred to your inventory asset, the finished good, once we finish the whole production cycle. So it's not allocating to other departments, but it will be carried over to the final products. It becomes of the cost of goods manufactured. Remember? So this will be the cost of goods manufactured of the final products. You may say, oh, I may have some other material cost or other things, but again, for our exercise, this is the total cost happened for the assembly department. So that's kind of the end of the exercise. I hope by this exercise, you can get some like similar to the financial accounting modules, right? So now we can connect the allocation assessment, direct cost, indirect cost, responsibility centers we covered in the managerial accounting into the SAP controlling module. So how you can see the cost information is tracked, is processed and allocated under the SAP system.